Hello, I'm Jess from Centered Self, and this video is to kind of give you a little bit of a breakdown on what the different modalities are of psychotherapy, psychology, counseling, therapy, anything that kind of comes into the mental health field. I'm going to try to break it down a bit for you. Because this can actually be one of the things my clients bring up all the time, is there's so much terminology within our profession that what does it actually mean? First things first, how do I work? Well, I'm a psychodynamic practitioner. This stems from Freud. All roads lead back to Freud. And he looks at the past, he looks at the unconscious, he looks at the motivations that we have as people and the ways that these interact now in our day-to-day living. As a relational psychodynamic psychotherapist, what a mouthful, it often means that we are recognizing the ways in which our relating with others is often very much initiated into our past and our past relating. And so for us, we're not necessarily gravitating to our rule book, but rather we're recognizing and using our own healing, our own past, and our relationship with you as a client to start to recognize what these dynamics actually look like in the what we call here and now of the counseling relationship. Another one that kind of stemmed relatively around the same period is called person-centered. If you see someone called person-centered, human-centered, humanist, it's all stemming from a guy named Rogers. And Rogers, or Rogerian approach, is a very, well, in the title, human-centered approach. It looks at you as the expert of your own life, your own past. Often it'll be using word-for-word reflections, paraphrasing, relating to help you flourish as a human being and as a client. And so for them, they use empathy, unconditional positive regard, or UPR, or congruence. And all of these, these three, what they call core conditions, help us care for our clients and let them flourish. And for them, and for us, it's a way for us to kind of build that up in relationship, very similar to psychodynamic. They also use the relationship with clients. Now, empathy, UPR, and congruence are not owned by the person-centered. In fact, any therapist worth their salt are going to be using these three core conditions. And person-centered has many more conditions that they work from. But basically, you would come first as the client. And it would go at your own pace with them right beside, if not slightly in front of you, quote unquote, in your own process. Within that, a school that's come up is called emotion-focused therapy, and that's looking at how our emotions impact us. It's also a very humanist approach, and it starts to recognize about how humans are kind of geared by emotions. They function well when they are emotionally attuned to themselves and have a stronger level of actualization within those emotions. Often our emotions can get almost shut down because they're shameful. I'm thinking here of anger or jealousy. Sometimes these emotions are hard to express because they've been actually really shamed in us. So we may, in fact, choose a different emotion when we're feeling, let's say, embarrassed. We may get angry because we don't know how to process this emotion. Emotion-focused therapy often tries to start to get us to navigate where these emotions come from. The next one I'm going to talk about is called narrative therapy. Within narrative therapy, it's all about the story you're telling, how you came to tell that story, what language you use to tell that story. And sometimes it's actually about a restorying process for you as a client. What do we tell ourselves about ourselves? Where did that come from? Did it come from you? Is it a priori? And then from there, starting to see that it's actually part of our past that has impacted the ways in which our stories about ourselves, about others, about the world come to impact us and come to kind of help shape how we relate to others. That restoring process can be so transformative in our healing. The other one I'm going to talk about is one you'll know time and time again because you'll hear it a lot in the medical model, and that's called cognitive behavioral therapy, or also behavioral therapy. With this can also be something called dialectical behavioral therapy. Now, they're different and there's nuances, but basically they're a very structured approach. They're an approach that the hospitals or other medical models love because they have a very clear start and a very clear end. Often you'll be working from a workbook with these. It'll be challenging some of your normal everyday thoughts that maybe are maladaptive and starting for you to reframe those thoughts into very adaptive thinking. This can be awesome. In fact, I often use homework in my practice because in some ways, sometimes just having a 50-minute session with a therapist is not enough. One of the things it doesn't often do, and CBT therapists have been known to say that it doesn't dive into the why these things are coming, the emotional, unconscious stuff that can come up with us as clients. So when you're doing CBT, you're going to be challenging these thought processes. You're going to be working with homework and usually a therapist who's guiding you in a very solution-based way. The reason why I think you can understand that the hospitals like it is because there's a clear kind of understanding of where you're going. Many people can adopt any of these different approaches, and there are so many more than I can tell you in a 7-minute video. But these are kind of the main ones that you'll be seeing time and again. You may be getting a different approach for someone who's more integrative. They may be navigating different aspects. And if you have a specialization in trauma, there may be different trauma approaches. For example, EMDR is an approach that often is based within trauma. So what you're going to be looking for as a client is thinking, what do I want? And then finding a modality.